welcome to the Love Positivism podcast. I'm your host, Shireen, and I'm the creator of Love Positivism. I'm here to help you on your spiritual and healing journey. I am a certified yoga and meditation teacher, a student of Chinese medicine, a doula, a Reiki practitioner, and a passionate, highly sensitive person. I want to use my knowledge to channel information and messages for you to grow on all levels. Hi, and welcome to the Love Positivism podcast and to this episode. I am so happy to connect with you again, and I'm so grateful for everyone who has listened to the meditation that I shared last week, and so many of you have subscribed to my YouTube channel now and shared the podcast. I'm so grateful. I always show my gratitude by doing an oracle card reading for those who share the podcast on Instagram or Facebook, and for those who leave reviews on iTunes, and for all of you who do subscribe to my YouTube channel. So thank you so much. And I'm excited for this week's episode and for this week's guest. I have the beautiful and amazing Achintya Devi as my guest. Achintya is the founder of Goddess Rising Mystery School and Global Sisterhood. She is dedicated to supporting women reclaim their ancient feminine power and sovereignty and embody their soul's essence. She's a Priestess of Avalon, ordained in the Temple of Isis and the Rose Lineage of the Magdalene, and she facilitates Priestess of the Rose and Priestess of the Moon trainings. She's also a Certified Wholistic Health Practitioner, Women's Embodiment Mentor, Acupressure, and CranioSacral therapist, and she teaches Kundalini yoga and meditation. And she currently lives on Maui with her husband, and she shares her beautiful teachings and wisdoms, and she's just so powerful to listen to. I know that this episode will really serve all of you, and we get into topics covering things such as the energy shifts that are going on and the awakenings. We also talk about the Divine Mother, womb healing, and also the full moon we had this week. Different types of initiations, and she shares her story and her life with us. So I'm really grateful and so excited to share this with you. So just enjoy the episode, and thank you for listening. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Shireen, for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so grateful that you're here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And I just want to start by asking you, how do you stay mindful and present?
Beautiful question. Powerful and deep question. I think one of the things for me that is a very simple tool, gift that we all have, is the power of our breath. And so to come into presence, I bring forth my breath, deep breaths. And I know when I breathe deeply, I allow for my awareness to be very much more connected into my physical body, to ground me and aware of my surroundings. So that's, a basic aspect. And I'm kind of chuckling because, we think that it's, the breath is so, it is basic, and it is, but it's also so deep. So the breath practices for me are something that are very important. When you say mindful too, and present and mindful, what comes to me is my priestess path. And I think some of the aspects of that connected in with being attuned to the cycles of nature and aware of, which is a very, I will say, it's a it's a constant inspiration for me. So being connected in with the cycles of nature, the lunar cycles, the planetary cycles, the star cycles, the sun cycles, and then being connected with the earth in that way. Those are some of the aspects for me that really are a foundation for me as a being. And then I will say the power of being mindful. When I think about this question, it alludes to, awareness. And so with awareness, for me, what's alive in right now is that I feel the awareness of the me merged with the we. So the principles of bringing forth personal self with the infinite, with God, Goddess, with Source, with my surroundings, and that's really important for me, for being aware of this life journey, of present and aware, alert and conscious, and I think with that also comes a lot of the guiding principles, you could say, or of life, with aspects of gratitude and friendship and generosity and service and passion and self-care to serve others. So these are some of the foundational principles, I think, for me that are embodied, that I keep coming back to over and over and over again. That is just how I walk this path, this earth walk, and constantly in flux and in change. So those are some of the immediate things that come to mind for me.
That's beautiful. Very powerful. And yeah, I always say that the breath is, we breathe for a reason. It's not just, we weren't designed to breathe just by chance. So it's a really powerful tool, actually, when we are mindful and aware of it. Yeah. And I think I can't really remember when I found you. And like the paths that we crossed, like and the synchronicities are really divine. And I think what the internet and Instagram and all these things, it's positive in a way that we have, like we can cross paths with people that in the physical we wouldn't cross paths with the physical distance. So we're actually like we're traveling through distance, which is our soul is like that. So it's just a manifestation of how the world is. But it's beautiful. So I'm really interested in your work and your background. Maybe you want to start by sharing that and the path that you're on.
Okay, I'm have a big smile on my face too, because as you were speaking, I just think about how, technology in this way in our modern world, when used with the same ways of of those principles which I was just speaking of before. It's like when we use it with mindfulness, and it's such a beautiful and powerful tool of our connection and really for our planet right now in weaving forth the new systems that our planet is needed and the way of our interconnection. So I really have thought for many years how the internet, when used wisely, is such a gift from the goddess, and like everything, it is neutral, and it's how we utilize it. And of course, there's the shadow side of being on the screens for too long, which sometimes can be a big challenge for those of us that are change makers and and here to bring our works through in that way. But so I appreciate you sharing that piece. And let's see, gosh. What do you want to know?
Everything, like, and also how, like your like, how did you maybe start by telling us your story? Like, how did you get into this work?
Well, okay. That's such a good question. I think every time I'm asked this, you know, it's like that childlike innocence of like, what's alive now? What's
Mm.
here? I do feel that from a really young age, I very much was connected in with the inner world. I felt very like if I can put words to it now, which I didn't have at the time, I would say definitely I felt pretty attuned to the other dimensions, or really to light, and to the spirit world and the natural world. And so I was blessed at a young age to have a lot of nature time on Vancouver Island, which is, I'm from British Columbia, Canada. And so that was really a foundational aspect for me. And as a young teenager, I was taught many of the ways of the natural world, and began to have quite a deep connection to magic through different initiations in nature. And that really was my guiding light and sanctuary in my teenage years that were, you know, tumultuous, and going through high school and all of those initiations that I think we all, you know, have our own experiences with. So as I grew older, that was really that which kept, you know, like kept me, or being in nature and attuning within was a constant. I don't know if I want to say quest, because it is the quest, but it was a constant aspect of my life. So I think there was a great turning point for me, a few things that I can say, because I think there's just so much. So I'll pick a few. One of them was when I was 19. I met Amma, Mata Amritanandamayi Devi. She is the incredible hugging saint that has hugged over 31 million people, I think it is, in the world. And when I met her, I had a very, very powerful experience that I didn't quite understand at the time. And, you know, probably after meeting her within a couple of years, I began to travel with her all over India, and on her tours, and in North America and South America. And I spent a good amount of my 20s with her. And being in the presence of an enlightened and awakened avatar, divine mother incarnate in that form, has its many gifts. And so I was really deeply being initiated in many ways on the inner realms with her, and with the transmissions that were coming forth of course, knowing thyself. So this isn't about, you know, just like quote unquote, like following the guru, you know, it's like, it's following that inner guru. And so that was a massive foundation for me. When then at one point in my journey, it was very beautiful and powerful. I remember being actually at her ashram in India, and it was New Year's Day, and I had this real like deep inspiration to offer a New Year's ceremony for the sisters that were at the ashram. And it was in that circle on that New Year's Day many years ago that I had a very, very powerful experience during that circle, where I began to really merge with the energy of Amma, of the Divine Mother, of the Great Sophia, you know, many different words, not just like Amma as the physical form, right? And it was this opening of my awareness, and I could feel like literally a path opening through, and it was very powerful energy. I started to transmit and to download a lot of energy and light, and messages were coming through. And it came to this point where it was just, the energy translated to, this is your life now. This is what you are meant to do. And it was like, go forth. And I just knew in that moment, everything from all of my years of what I will say was my priestess path, without necessarily knowing it at a young age, it was like it all culminated to this moment of, everything that you've been through, all of the shadows, all of the highs, all of the lows, everything in your own path now is ready to be shared. And now it was kind of like Amma was like pushing me out of the nest. She was like, okay, now you go do your mission. And so that was a really powerful experience for me. And, continue, then it was like, okay, then it's continued until this day. One other thing I will say that was very powerful for me was also in that window of time after I had met Amma, but before I was traveling with her, I had a very powerful initiation that was extremely uncomfortable, that lasted for a long time. And shortly after meeting her, actually, I was going to South America, to Ecuador and Peru, and I was having a bunch of these inoculations that you have to get in order to go into the country. So my system was fed, unfortunately, cocktails of these, vaccines, and my body responded horribly to them. And I had within a month or so after all of these inoculations, I had extreme acne. Looking back at it now, it was my body trying to rid itself of these heavy metals that were through my bloodstream. And, as a young woman, this was very, very challenging for me to, really, quote unquote, like hate what I saw on the outside. And of course, then, had big heart on the inside. And how do I bridge this? It was a good many, many, many months of this. And what happened is that I ended up taking this drug to try and clear this. And it did, but what happened too is that cocktail, was sitting in my bloodstream, and really as poison that I felt was dormant until I had the consciousness and the readiness to go through the elimination of what all of that was. And so what happened is that when I was 22, and these are all really significant numbers connected in with the Rose Lineage path. And so I see how my life initiations have taken place at certain ages and certain times that are very much attuned to these powerful numbers connected in with the Rose Lineage. So the 19, when this happened, this was when I had met Amma, and 19 is significant of the amount of months in the synodic cycle for Venus. 22 of this timeline that I'm talking about now, that I'm about to share with this is a very significant, master number, 22, connected in with the Magdalene and connected in with Egypt, and is a very powerful Grail number, connected with Mary Magdalene and Yeshua as the great beings on the earth plane, and then into their ascended form. So there's quite a lot with the number 22. And that's when I had this massive initiation, when I had just completed a year of my holistic health practitioner program, which was a deep, deep dive in the esoteric arts and in body work and Chinese medicine. And I love one of systems, these beautiful, systems of creation, the 5 elements, and the alchemical working. So this was a very powerful alchemical initiation that began to take place for me after being, giving and receiving healing work for a year plus, actually. I had the worst menstrual cramps of my life. And I had never had them before, and my face was green. I was throwing up. I did not know what was happening. My Chinese medicine teacher at the time thought that I was having a miscarriage, which was impossible because I wasn't sexually active at that time. And it was horrible. It was literally, and it was excruciating pain, and I did not understand what or why this was happening. And this continued for many, many years. And it took me a long time to recognize and put the pieces together of how my physical experience of all of those heavy chemicals was tied into, this polluting my physical body temple, and also how this initiated really this dark night of the soul, so to speak, that would happen, once a month. And so I felt like I was, for many, many years being initiated into, into the realms of pain, into the realms of, call it Kali, or, Sophia in her black form, and really into the pain, so much so where once I would kind of go through this threshold of the pain, which I would need to have support with through different herbs and sometimes, pharmaceuticals like Advil or ibuprofen, what have you, I would reside in a place of really, which many women who are probably listening to this can really, connect with, of being in, and you too, of course, being in those liminal realms of spirit and spirit on the earth plane. And there's so much that really I began to receive through months and years of this. It was like inner Jedi training through my own painful experiences. And that really led me into the path of deeper aspects of the goddess, and in terms of coming into the consciousness of merging with the goddess, source, creator, coming into the awareness of our one mind, our one heart, and really through my own painful experience, recognizing the pain of the world, and really being in that literal, constant initiation to then alchemize that pain. And, for those that are listening to that, that idea of really turning lead into gold. And I share this because I feel it's very relevant to the healing and awakening journey that is unique to every individual and what the planet is going through, and part of our purpose and incarnation for being here. So that way of bringing about and seeing the wounding and the pain and the unconsciousness, and bringing that into a place of acceptance and embrace, and then also a movement of allowing the movement of understanding of the shadow into the light, from the lead into the gold, and that literal transmutation. And that doesn't mean, it's the bypassing of anything. It's the inclusion of everything in the natural course of how creation moves. So that alchemy, I see, for my own self, was such a foundation for the way that I work with women now in guiding really from the shadow places into, and embracing that and into their natural transformation instead of being stuck in those places. And of course, this happens with great connection with my channeling and communion with my guides and the Rosa Mystica High Council. And the Rosa Mystica High Council is a group of beings who are connected in with the Rose Lineage, who have also walked this earthly plane, that have ascended into the higher realms, that are helping support the awakening of all of humanity at this time. So that's some of the key points I would say that has brought me forth on my journey to support women in their own healing and awakening journey, really through the womb space, through the cosmos, connection with the cosmos, because we're at a time right now on the planet where we are reclaiming the goddess within and the goddess all around. And in the human body form of the womb space is the seat of the goddess. And so all of the aspects of goddess that have been exiled and hidden and tortured and locked away are now and have been coming back to the surface. The consciousness in women around the world at this time, recognizing and seeing the places within where they may have fear of speaking due to past torture and attack in other lifetimes or in this for being in their power and speaking their truth. So this is, one of the big priestess wounds, all the way to, feeling cramping and pain in the womb space, which can be a denial of the goddess and the power of creation living within, and having that reclamation and embrace, because, it's part of the programming that we've all, to some degree, agreed to or participated in or been, indoctrinated into in this planet, that we know as a collective right now has not served us and doesn't serve Gaia or one another. So we're in this massive paradigm shift and literal alchemical shift where the chaos is happening, the pain is happening, the woundings are coming forth at the same time as quantum leaps in consciousness and the foundations of love and harmony and peace literally being embodied and being expanded, through our daily actions as a collective. So the personal weaves with the collective so beautifully and powerfully. And, every person, listening here now, every person on this planet, I really feel has their own destiny thread, a golden thread, and that is weaving into this great tapestry where we're all connected into this legacy of light that we're here co-creating literally right now. And everybody's strand, everybody's presence is so needed right now, because we are interconnected. We are in a symbiotic relationship as a one consciousness with our planet and literally beyond right now. So it's a very powerful time, I feel, to be alive, incarnated as a divine spirit in human form.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's so beautiful to listen to, and yeah, I really agree with everything. It's so I think all of us that are doing this type of work have definitely gone through our own, like the initiations that you're speaking about. It's like, it's really something that happens throughout life, and we just need to be aware of them and to see them as initiations. Sometimes we see them as curses,
right?
But it's really like, okay, now it's time to wake up a little bit more again and again, and it's this awakening that is happening right now, because I just received like this message yesterday, like a transmission that like all the work that has been done, and also all the work that sisters have done for so long, like now it's emerging. So I feel like I'm just in a perfect time where like there has been so much groundwork been done. We have to like really like honor that and see how blessed we are that we can practice this, and that we don't need to be afraid to practice this either. And and the message was so clear, like what all of us have been speaking about is that there is a healing that needs to be done, and it's within ourselves, and in the end everything is as exactly how it should be. But what is happening now, it is awakening. It's not if we disattach ourselves from the physical aspect of it, because nothing starts from the physical anyways, then this is the healing that we needed. This is a healing. This is not a curse. This is an initiation. So it's powerful, and it's really beautiful to see how we're shifting so fast, and like there's a shift of consciousness within everyone. But it's in this time when there's crisis also, or in our lives when there's crisis, things can come up to the surface that have been hidden away, that we need to face, that we're not facing. We just think that there's nothing there. And then maybe the crisis comes right before we die, and we shouldn't feel that way before we pass, like go on to the next level. So yeah, it's really powerful to be here right now.
It sure is. You know, I just had this really um I just had this linking in when you said crisis, and immediately, and I hadn't made this link yet, but what came through was the linking of the word crisis, and then chrysalis, and then Christed, and how the crisis, you know, that it appears, right, which is, you know, it's the both and, it's not really either or. I feel it's like, okay, yes, this global crisis, which is a call, right, a call to bring our awareness. Oh, something is happening. A lot of the world may label it as bad, and of course this is, I believe, to be inclusive of the pain and the grief and the struggle, along with the calling of bringing awareness to a shift that is needing to happen, part of this alchemy. So thinking of crisis and chrysalis, it's like our whole world right now is in a chrysalis time, where we are in the great unknown, but yet within that great unknown, there is still a natural movement, because we're star seeded. We have our own trajectory in our soul beings that is like a seed that is sprouting. It has its own intelligence. It's growing. It knows what to do, not from necessarily the place of the logical mind, but of, you know, our multidimensional awareness. And so then I think of, okay, being in the chrysalis, and then the Christed. And this time where, you know, as we're recording this, is in this time of Passover, Easter, you know, in the Judeo-Christian realms. But of course, that also underneath that, you know, has a connection to really the way of love, and the roots, you know, underneath that of how Christed is that of the light, and that we are all Christed beings. And so, you know, that Christed too, connecting in with Corona, the Corona, the crown, the crowning, it feels very significant in what we are globally in this initiation of. And again, I feel it's simultaneously an awareness of seeing and recognizing structures on this planet that have an agenda that has not been one of harmony and peace and equality and justice for all, but has actually been, you know, programmings that have been rooted in wounding. So I've been really tuning in with that. And when you said, you know, this piece of, we know that it's energy first, and then in its most dense form, you know, comes the physical. So, you know, working with the physical and working with the spirit, in the sense of recognizing that right now we're going through this massive paradigm shift and shifting of structures on this planet to move away, I believe, a collapse of the systematic pain and torture that's been afflicted to people and to the earth from a smaller, you know, amount of wounded souls on this planet who have had control. And there's now, it's like, no more. Time is up. It is time now. And this is where it gets like this bridge, a bridging of awareness to these wounded souls, of having an existential healing, an awakening and shift, merging away from pain and greed and hate into, you know, from all of these really deep shadow aspects, really to a return home to truth, to love, to God, Goddess, which has to happen from within. And so there's a massive collapse, and I feel, you know, who knows what's going to unfold in the next few months, but, you know, in the structures of our very earthly plane, you know, in the economy and in our structures of governing, and and that this simultaneously connects with the greater plan of being in this human form, awakened and in symbiotic relationship with the earth, with the structures and the systems, to exist and co-live symbiotically with one another, with Gaia, that is renewable, that is sustainable, that is life empowering. So it's a very exciting and powerful time to be alive, because it feels to me that we are in we're in the liminal realms now. Where timelines are converging, dimensions are converging, and we do have the power to co-create what the outcome is when we recognize that we do have power and choice from within us. And that's a huge initiation in and of itself, to reclaim one's power, that power, is not control and domination from the outside, but the power of truth, wisdom, and love that lives inside of each and every being, because we exist. And so that reclaiming of our own sovereignty is so deeply powerful, immeasurable, for what is needed in order to have these structures shift on the planet. So I see this as just, it's holographic, it's multidimensional, and it's very exciting, and it's very unknown and uncertain, and yet there's so much potential and possibility when we come together through the heart space, when we come together as a global family through the social distancing into the realms of the heart, whether we come together virtually or, in the subtle planes, and working with these beings as well, who are not necessarily on this earth, but in other dimensions, who have been working so hard. And as you said earlier, it's like all this groundwork. It's just like, we're at such this tipping point. I feel like we're in some ways it's just happening, and that's the alchemical evolution. And yet at the same time, it does require our focus.
Yes. Yeah. It's really powerful, and it's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing. It's really just so refreshing also to like this is also the time where we like stop and think to ourselves, like, are we being controlled? How are we being controlled? Like, is this what we're really, the things that we're getting programmed with, is it real? So now it's the time for that bubble to burst too.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so much.
It's Pandora's box, right? It really is.
It is. And I'm really, like, when you spoke also earlier, I'm really interested in womb work, and that's something that I've also been drawn to, and I can definitely relate to the feeling of holding pain that is not a physical pain. It's something else, and it's really linked to the collective as well. I think if we don't learn how to ground that, it becomes very heavy within ourselves. So maybe we can talk about that, like, because you have been working a lot with that type of healing, and how would you say that? Yeah, how do one connect into the pain that is being held within?
Oh, I know, so huge. Well, what comes to me right now in a parallel with everything we've just spoken about, and then merging to this, they're very much actually linked. Thinking about how the womb space in oneself is a holographic parallel to the womb space of Gaia. And so the ways in which Gaia has been, let's say, treated has not been necessarily, has been abusive. Not, of course, by all, but Gaia has experienced a lot of abuse over, our lifetime for sure. And we can see this with 5G towers that want to go up. We can see this with the plastics into her oceans and littering and pollution and on and on and on. And so there's a lack of reverence for life, and not only just a lack of reverence, but an intentional destruction of beauty and creation. And so as daughters of Gaia, from past lifetimes into this lifetime, many, 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 many women around the world who have experienced their, and this can be physical pain, or of course it can be emotional pain connecting into the womb space. This may derive from the physical experiences of having miscarriage or rape or abortion or complications in birth. And it may be from other lifetimes, which cannot be necessarily, spoken about so tangibly, but where there has been woundings from aspects of literally birthing creation, birthing an idea, being in the power of creation itself. So if we liken that all of the creative powers of Gaia are inside of our own womb spaces, that there's a simultaneous necessity to, first of all, bring acknowledgement and awareness and acceptance to the pain that is there, or what literally is happening for women in their own womb spaces, meaning, are you bleeding? Are you bleeding too much? Is there pain? Is there a lack of rhythm in your cycles? Are you not having a cycle? Women who have experienced different surgeries in the womb space, it's like every woman's story is unique. So taking into account, the uniqueness of every woman's experience in this way, and simultaneously where we all connect, which is the power of creation, the power of goddess within, and our abilities to conceive and to birth. And of course, this is figuratively and literally. So I think that first stage of recognizing, oh wow, yeah, I am a daughter of Gaia. There is a parallel that is here, and then a recognition of, okay, if Gaia, in the way that she creates, and she has seeds and flowers and vegetables that grow, and seeing the power of growth, there's that parallel recognition of what we're capable of, which we see this in birth. To grow a physical child inside, and to birth and to give life in this way. Of course, this is a co-creation. Simultaneously, the energies, birthing experiences on this planet. It's the energy of creation itself. And so the way that I see the big breakthrough and paradigm shift for most women is and I will say that we go very deeply. I have a program with my dear sister Joanna Maya Cohen, and it's Priestesses of the Moon, and we've been teaching this and guiding this for, I think 7, maybe 8 years now. I got to go back and look at a calendar, but it's an initiation of what I'm speaking of. And we go very deep into this. So, and because it's so needed, and so what I will say is that, this breakthrough piece is an awareness of seeing how our world has been masculinized, this patriarchal, over power over energy is completely dominates the ways and the structures and the pace of our life, which is what I believe why we're having this part of why we're having this big cut off of, or not cut off. It's a massive reset right now that's happening with the coronavirus, and a massive initiation, which we've just shared about. But we've been living in a world where what is valued is progress and growth, and it's led to, very, very fast-paced society, and to having goals being accomplished. Now, all of that is great and beautiful and wonderful when it's in balance with the feminine. So this more aspect of the masculine, which can be likened to the first half of the lunar cycle, that's really what's valued. And that's the aspect of the good girl and the maiden, and the lover and the mother. Now, then there's the whole other half of the cycle, which is the darker half, which is now going to the waning half. And this is where the mystery is. This is where there is the wild woman and the wise woman, the enchantress and the crone aspect, when we're speaking of archetypal energies. And this is the descent. This is the descent into the dark, much like what I was likening to with my own, womb journey, which the womb journeys of so many sisters, or it doesn't even have to be just of the womb, but that real descent into the dark. And to have and in the dark, of course, I want to add in a little tangent here, because I think it's really important, is that we have the dark and then we have the shadow. And a lot of the times when we're using the word dark in our modern day language, in English anyways, we have an association to bad or to evil. And that's not what I mean by the dark. And I think it's important for us to reframe. Those are more perhaps shadow energies, control energies, but not bringing, dark into the bad, because there's beauty in the dark. And that's part of a big shift that I feel we're needing to make in our association, that the dark is so much connected as the beauty of the night sky, and the dark that is the warm womb space, that is the power of creation itself. So when we go into this second half of the cycle, this is where this part of our cycle is not valued in our world. If we are more inward, and we're not about progress or doing or accomplishing, we're about being and dreaming and feeling, it hasn't been valued. It's been seen as lazy, unproductive, and, worthless. And of course, then that's putting all of those attributes to those aspects of the feminine and this whole other part of the creation cycle itself. So of course, we are needing to make that shift individually, and as sisters, as women who are connected. And of course, this is for all beings, but I'm specifically, referring to this as the womb space of you, as you have, asked. And so this first awareness of, oh my gosh, yeah, how, women, like an inquiry for a sister would be, it's like, oh wow, yeah, how do I allow myself to be with this part of myself? Do I push myself? Do I, take, am I popping pills all the time so I don't feel the pain and I just continue on as normal? And am I stuffing, tampons up myself all the time so that I'm not even aware of my blood? I don't want to see my blood. I want to, hide this, because it's that hiding of the feminine. Now, this is not to put guilt or blame or shame upon any woman, but it's to bring awareness to a global pandemic of women. Speaking of pandemic, it was like women who, and it's nobody's necessarily fault, because this is part of the programming that we've been, agreed to come into to shift. But in this lifetime of seeing how, we're not taught, most people in our world, to be celebrating our cycles from a young age, and to be honoring and respecting this aspect of creation that lives within all women, which is half of our population. So of course, then there's going to be friction, and every woman's journey of, wow, yeah, have I felt pain, shame, wanting to hide my cycle, not talk about it, because that's what we've been taught. So this is a huge piece that is that this is part of the overarching energy. And then comes into, of course, the unique healing for every woman. And so that's to have a new relationship with each of the lunar phases that are, represented on the outside. And we're having this call at the full moon. So this is really
Yes.
beautiful. So,
Yes.
this, having a connection to how the outer lunar cycles are connected into the physical lunar cycles, how they are completely paralleled. And when we look to nature and in her cosmic creation journey, that's exactly what's happening on the inside of each of us. And so there's going to be, when we come into that real devoted relationship to our own cycles, every woman will see uniquely the places of aha moments and ways of how really a denial of the feminine perhaps is ready to come into a great celebration of the feminine. And, I feel like we've come such a long way. I think that women around the world are coming into greater awareness of this. And there has been so much healing, and we've seen the spreading of so many sister circles and red tents, and the sharing of these lunar and blood mysteries. And I think with that comes a very important piece, which is a reunion with blood itself, because most of our culture associates, blood, it's with war and seeing blood shed. But we also know that blood is the power of creation. And so the blood that comes from us, for those women that do bleed in their bleeding years, that this blood is the power of life itself. It's the blood of life. And it's actually very important for us as women to have our divine oracular seeing and dreaming and psychic powers is very much linked in with the blood, and how we treat the blood, and how we relate with the blood. And in this way, very, very powerful, because there's so much stigma. It's like, it's dirty, it's gross, it's messy. It's like, I don't want to see it, because that's what we've been taught as a whole. And so being able to, in very, specific ways with devotion, in offering our own blood to the earth, what happens is that we bring our own DNA and our own cells into the consciousness of Gaia in her living soils. And she receives that. It nourishes her. It's part of a massive, I feel, turning point for us as women, when we can, with great devotion and love, offer our blood to Gaia as her daughter. And she then soaks that in. We know that how this supports the growth of plants, and really nourishes her. And then in turn, you can imagine your own DNA, right, in the sacred soils of the earth. So it's like, it needs to be very specific where you do this. Is not just to put your blood anywhere, for sure. So I feel there's for me, and for what I share and teach, that there's some specific protocol, because there's places you just don't want to have your blood, like in public places, because you want to have that be preserved, and offered to Gaia specifically. But anyhow, that then she in turn, right, as she is alive, all her awareness and her energy then infuses in your blood. And since that blood is, obviously it's not in your body at this time, but there's that DNA that goes into a holographic effect of within your own DNA through your blood. And that's the missing link that restores a cyclical, symbiotic, meaning beneficially, or mutually beneficial, in exchange of working with, living with our earth, that she supports us and we support her. She supports us and we support her. Just like the cycles of the moon. And so the blood becomes a very important way of having healing and awareness and a whole paradigm shifting of what your astral menstrual cycle is, which then links up into the greater cycles of life and to the creative powers of the goddess that are inherently the gifts within every woman. So it's, I feel that this is something that's very practical, and it's also very powerful in linking the physical and the spirit realms, linking in yourself with Gaia's wisdom and then her wisdom with the greater cosmos. So it's very vast and powerful. And I say powerful in the sense that our blood, because it creates life, when we offer it with intention and with prayer, that Gaia receives that into her crystalline grid, in her telluric grid, her intelligence system. And so it's really a powerful aspect of sacred activism that every woman can do. If you're, and if you're not bleeding, it can be with the full moon or the new moon, with your saliva or with your breast milk, or, with your tears, with any fluids that come from you.
Yes, and we wouldn't have any fluids without Gaia, right? So it's all within us. We drink the water, we eat the food, and we're placed here, and we're like, even if I jump, I'm still going back down. So we're never separate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for sharing that. And yeah, this full moon is really beautiful. And to me, it's like an invitation to balance now
Mm-hmm.
the individual's self and the I mean, Libra is a Venusian sign, so it's really the divine feminine. So these coming 2 weeks are really important. What would you say is the most important work that we're doing now up until the next cycle?
Oh, wow. This is so huge. Well, I first want to share that I think that absolutely, or I feel more so, this full moon is very, very powerful. And yeah, this being Libra and ruled by Venus in the Venusian ways, there's so much of Venus's energy that is coming to the earth plane right now, in great support for the return of the goddess, because she is coming to a completion of her 8-year cycle. And so she is, ending this 8-year cycle and rebirthing in June, which is all very much parallel to these greater cycles of time that are shifting. And so this 8-year cycle is also linked in with, greater cycles of many, tens of thousands of years that are also linked with Sirius and the Pleiades, and which are very significant, star systems that are indicating in their positionings a turning of the tide and a shifting of the ages. So this is a huge birthing year where we've just had this huge Pluto and Jupiter conjunction, and there's going to be 2 more this year, and these really symbolic, in Capricorn, of the great structures on our planet changing. And so there's great aspect here of revelation and revolution and collapse and rebirth and resurrection. So here we are then at this particular full moon, which is about balancing the inner and the outer planes. And so when you ask, like, what's the most important work we can do right now? I mean, I think that's for each person to really tune into and feel into. But when we look at the greater mythos of what's happening astrologically, and what I believe is being asked of us in the greater sense right now is can we merge, and how do we of merging the me and the we? Because Libra is all about the we. She's a relational goddess. Venus is a relational goddess. It's how we relate. So how do we relate to our inner and outer worlds? How do we relate to the masculine and the feminine? How do we bring forth and merge this aspect of destruction and rebirth. Really, this is a time of allowing for the alchemy to take place, meaning there's so much that is being transcended right now. We are going from, and so much shift. So there's chaos, and we know that out of chaos, stars are born. How do we also then merge and include, pain and joy? So this Libra energy is very much about, of course, it's the balance, but she's the only sign that isn't an animal or a physical figure. She's the scales. Well, and we say she is a feminine, or she can be, portrayed in that feminine, ruled by Venus in that sense. But she can also be seen as a masculine sign. So that's what's very interesting, because she's both, because she's the balance. Libra is the balance. Okay. Well, I'll take out she. Libra is the balance. And so it's this opportunity to bring in what we've perceived as duality. And I just see them, like both hands coming together and merging. So an inclusivity and an allowance and acceptance, and perhaps even a celebration of how we can allow and give space for all the different feelings that we're feeling them fully. Because if we are feeling angry or sad or in pain, and we stop those emotions, we will be creating a blockage to our own growth and evolution. And those emotions can just fester. And, if we want to just try and shelf them, they're going to come back again. So, allowing for a healthy expression of any anger, frustration, pain, allowing oneself to feel that all of the aspects of that may be alive to their fullest. Because when we do that there's a natural movement. Then it's like, oh, okay, we've completed that cycle of anger. Now that goes into perhaps creating boundaries, or this goes into it's an action, where anger can then be utilized to create shift in a positive way, not to harm. So we're in this simultaneous energy of, right now anyways, this Aries sun and this Libra full moon. So this is an energy of Mars, Aries, and Libra, which is Venus. So Mars and Venus. So there's the aspect of taking initiation, and taking initiation in our own lives to create balance, and taking initiation in our service to create balance in the world. And then what does that mean? And one's own definition of what balance is. And then it's the divine lovers. It's the masculine and feminine coming together to merge these dualities. So everything I was just saying before is like bringing these opposites together and allowing then for the resurrection of the Trinity, of the third energy. So here we are in this timeline of the Holy Week, which when you go to the different calendar times could actually be considered last week and is also this week from ancient calendars. But we're in this realm of this time of what is the quote Holy Week right now, and knowing that this connects to then being in a ceremonial space, and that there is going through death and pain, and then a resurrection of truth, of letting that die in a specific form to be resurrected and come alive in our Christed self, in the crystalline self, in the light self, the truth of who we are. So it's massive. And I think that one thing that feels very important with this is the power of surrender within this time, the power of forgiveness, and the power of initiation. Because for this resurrection, in this time of integrating duality to create a trinity, to create the third, it is a very alchemical process of a letting go. As we are in the full moon and go to the exhale, right? We're at the peak right now, and then we're going to go descend down into the dark, which we've spoken about. This time then coming into a release. And when we think about what needs to be released in our lives, this can be physical things. So this can be very powerful to, literally be shedding on the physical plane. It may be a wonderful time that you may wish to create some windows of time to actually fast and to be taking less in. This can be a time that can be very powerful to then, on an emotional level, surrendering to the process, not a giving up, but a surrendering to the energies that are here to serve. So Gaia is, simultaneously in this time, there's an initiation energy, but there's also an initiation into the stillness, into the quiet, into the unknown. And so it's so important, I feel, for us to listen to that. And as we descend into the dark, we're given a great opportunity for that. And within that, a lot of reflection and I think revelation can come forward, where it's forgiveness for perhaps to yourself or to somebody else, an offering of compassion and empathy for others, and an allowance of this great, I will say, devotion, to devote oneself really to allowing for what wants to be birthed from within you, whether this is, personally or service in the world. It's just like, what is asking to be reset? What is asking to be restored? What is asking to be resurrected? And of course, that's going to be very unique for every person. And it's an inquiry of devotion. So I'm sorry that I can't do this is the thing I think is most important, but it feels very vast. This is, this is really a time where, I'll just close by saying, this feels such a powerful time of where we are being asked or invited to welcome in the multidimensional part of ourself, or say higher self, our intelligence and our spirit, our heart, that is really is divine and is sovereign and is being asked to be resurrected. So for that to happen, there has to be a death. And that's what I think this is part of this mass global initiation that we're in. Wow, what's no longer working for me? Where have I participated in that which has harmed Gaia or others? How do I want to shift my behaviors or patterns? And really knowing that each and every one of us then have a power, the great power of choice, the power of light within to choose. And so it's a resurrection of our power, really, our power to be in communion with love and to co-create a world that benefits all beings.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. And yeah, that's a beautiful way to end the conversation. Thank you so much for taking your time to share and to be here, your presence. I'm really grateful for that.
Well, Shireen, I'm so grateful for our connection and for having me here today on this podcast. And I offer it from my heart to yours and for all of you that are listening and in devotion to Gaia, and really as a thread of important conversations that we're having right now in this great time of change and awakening. And so I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to share. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'll share the links to you and Goddess Rising and everything that you do, so people can get in touch with you if they have if it resonates with them and they want to know more about this path. So thank you so much. And I'm so blessed by this conversation. It really it was powerful to hear you speak. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, sister. I actually have one more thing I just want to share quickly, which is
Sure.
that,
Yeah.
which it just came through really strong. And I just think that one of the other things that's so important for us right now is to continually connect in community. This really goes out to, you know, the people that are living alone, especially too. Is just being in either a community like a sisterhood community, being in, you know, a community or creating community where you are even from social distancing, you know, through the internet platforms. I feel it's so important for our connection, because we're all going through different experiences, and to be seen, witnessed, and supported is one of the greatest gifts that we can experience and offer one another. And so that just feels very, very much alive. And I want to offer that as well. If there's anybody that's here that wants to be connecting in to community more deeply, it's like connecting in with all of your offerings, Shireen, connecting in with, you know, there's an invitation here. We have an amazing Global Sisterhood, Goddess Rising Sisterhood Facebook group. If anybody wants to come in there, we've been, you know, gathering live in there. And there's been more community connections taking place. And that just feels really important because we do need each other for reflection and for support and inspiration and guidance to navigate through these very powerful initiatory times. So, you know, with everything else that was said, that just actually just feels like the most, you know, one of the most important things to, and of course there's a balance, having your own inner process, but then really being in that place of sovereignty is also being in communion with the cycles of nature, being in communion with Gaia, being in communion with community, common union. So I want to offer that up because I think that there can be a shadow of, you know, in this time of isolation of like, you know, when people thinking like, oh, I mean, obviously we're all going through this as in, you know, as a planet. So we know that we're not alone technically, but the experiences can feel very lonely. And so bringing that reconnection into community can be very powerful, strengthening, and healing. So want to offer that with a bow and great gratitude.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's so important. And this is when we really realize how important the community is. And we have these tools. So we're not forced to be isolated in any way. So we can still, and it's so empowering to be in this group. And yeah, just sisters gathering. It's like what we all need. So yeah, I really recommend that as well.
Well, heart to heart with you, sister. Thank you so much for having
Thank
me
you
today.
so much. Yes, thank you for taking your time. And yeah, so much blessings and love to you.
Blessings and so much love for you as well, and to everybody listening. Blessed be.
Thank you. Thank you, beautiful souls, for listening. I'm so grateful for your presence, and I hope this episode helped you with anything that you're going through, and that this episode can help you grow and find more and deeper parts of yourself and to explore new dimensions right now as we have more time and space to go within. So I'm truly grateful that you're here, and let's take a deep breath in and exhale. Namaste.